project is imagined as a series of 4 podcast episodes revolving around the subject of reality and its creation. It reflects on different realities that could exist in the future, our potential to have an impact on it, the virtual and the real, the magical and the scientific or pseudoscientific. The idea is to open up the subject of the prophetic potential of art, culture, writing, films, and everything we do as creators, and how this might be helpful once acknowledged and embraced. The series aims to explore the position of seeing contemporary art, not only as a reflection on the state of the world and its perception, but also as something that is able to predict the future. Of course, how literally we, or you, take this statement is up for discussion. Hello, and thank you for joining me today. My name is Natalia Paunic, and I'm talking to Jeanne Graff, a writer and a curator born in Lausanne, Switzerland, who lives in New York, even though, Jeanne, you're no longer in New York, right? That's an old biography.
I still live there.
She's a columnist for May Review Paris, works in a vineyard, and teaches at Head Art School in Geneva. In 2014, Graff founded WAD 86F Kepler, an art space without walls. She has organized numerous international exhibitions and performs with her band Solar Lies. So thank you, Jeanne, for being with me here today. So today's conversation is regarding the general theme of the podcast. Projects are prophecies, prophecies are projects, which explores how the future can be invented, anticipated, imagined, etc., with a special reflection on art and its capacity to create the future. Something that really inspired me to talk to Jeanne was reading that she, quote unquote, wrote a book by accident. The book in question has a name that is quite challenging to pronounce, and its spelling changes as far as I understood. And Jeanne is going to read the first chapter from the book to us.
Patrick comes to Le Bar for the first time in 1979, 27 Rue de Condé. He takes the place over in 1991. Since then, he has said that he was taken as hostage by the place. Félix Guattari lives a bit further down the street, number 9. I come there for the first time in 2010. I asked Patrick if I can charge my phone behind the counter. Then I drew his portrait, with open shirt as always and his silver chain, as well as those of the other customers. We really get along with each other right away. The portrait is still hanging in the frame of the mirror, which is at the right side at the entrance of the bar. Because I forget my phone when I leave, I have to come back the day after. Since then, I come back here often when I'm in Paris, if I want to be quiet, to know no one. One evening, the customers at the table next to us, hardly 18 years old, order Patrick's famous cocktail, the Crazy Hand. A mix of liqueur flambée shaken with a hand that covers the top of the cognac glass. They first breathe the alcohol vapor, then bottoms up. The alcohol goes straight to the brain and they fly. You have to watch them a bit and not serve them too quickly, otherwise you load them too fast. It can be a bit annoying, the hand. You don't always remain intact. It's no longer the crazy hand that we were doing in the 90s. We invented it because we thought it was funny, but it was too dangerous. Now it's a bit more of a developed product. I sometimes call Patrick at Le Bar around midnight from Lausanne to know how he is. He has no mobile phone. Tuesday is usually good because there are not so many clients, 1 or 2 tables maximum, and he closes early, around 2 or 3 a.m. Sunday and Monday, you can't reach him. He's in the Val d'Oise checking his account. I can hardly imagine him out of Le bar. Le bar is invisible from the street. No sign. Just an inscription on the doorstep where you can read, "'Tis you." Patrick opens the door with a button situated under the counter. He accepts everyone, while it depends if it's the right moment or not. The walls are covered with black velvet curtains. The front window on the street side too. The architecture is in L shape. At the bottom, a tunnel without light. You have to bend down to stand. You don't know when it stopped. It looks like it would go on forever. The used sofas made with sky have been here for decades. The Asian decoration was here before Patrick. If you want to change the decoration, you need to have a better idea. What has changed, according to him, is not the inside of Le bar, but the outside, the street and the weather. Well, actually, yes, there is no smoking inside anymore. You have to smoke outside, and not to make noise, not to talk, to be quiet. Several times, because of the neighbors complaining. Patrick already got 3 warnings. As the taxi driver says, Patrick is a good guy, and Patrick's clients are good guys. You can trust them. Going out of the car, Anne wants to pay and asks for a fracture. She asks for a fracture instead of a facture, a receipt. It's not a slip since she doesn't know the meaning of the word fracture. She's lived in Paris for a year and has just started learning French. For a year, she's also practiced French boxing, savate, in a club between Place de la République and Gare de l'Est. Ibrahim teaches there. He's a world champion of French boxing and Beau Vietnam. He travels from Sarcelles several times a week. Anne from the city center at the artist residency where she lives. Anne brings me to the boxing lesson during the summer. We've worked together for several months. Then I bring Anne. I write every day to Anina, who is spending a few months in the United States. Every day, meeting at the Terrasse des Archives, Catherine office, with the group, whose constellation varies depending on the ability of each of us. The first class. I get changed in the dressing room and enter the boxing room where I see Anne. People stare at me with funny faces. Someone burst out of laughter because apparently, due to my unfamiliarity with the clothes, I mistook the boxer bra for the final uniform, when in fact you have to add a t-shirt on top of it. I go back into the dressing room and come back with a t-shirt on. First lesson, by Ibrahim. You shouldn't be afraid of getting hit. And then you have to hit. The boxing has a strange effect on me. It makes me cry. So in the dressing room, after the lesson, teardrops appear. Anne joined me and confessed that boxing has had the same effect on her. Second lesson, still with Ibrahim. Demonstrations against the bombing in Gaza are happening on La Place de la République. The atmosphere is tight. The first demonstration had been forbidden. Hundreds of CRS are surrounding the place in battle gear. It's been like this for several days. Ibrahim tells me that television team tried to interview the children that he's taking care of in Sarcelles because they think there are tension in that neighborhood. He told them to go away. Then he teaches us how to bind our hands. The fingers must be well separated when you bind the phalange. Then how to wear the gloves. The strong foot and fight must be en réserve. You defend yourself with your weak side to fight better with your stronger side. The body has to get used to doing things in reverse. It's not easy. Apparently, I have a crazy leg, as Ibrahim calls it. My leg always wants to step forward instead of staying backwards. Nevertheless, the body learns quickly, and after 2 hours of training, the crazy leg remains where it should be. Tears rise. I fight with Anne. She moves slower and measure her strength. I move myself a bit in any direction, as if I were miming the fight, most probably because of the timidity provoked by this new situation. You don't know how to behave, where to stand in the room, who is looking in and how to use the material. I continue miming. Anne is really fighting. It will come for me at the third lesson with Anne. How to learn to really move with your fight and your feet. To protect your face and to dodge. A kick in the pants. The seat. I accidentally give one to Ibrahim. And the feet. You need at least one lateral kick during a round, which lasts 1 minute and 30 seconds. Then 1 minute of rest. 3 rounds for a match. Kicks in the tibia are forbidden. The attack ensues with hits to the face, frontal and laterals above the belt, avoiding the breast for women. We go drink a coffee after the lessons. Ibrahim, who trains us, does not drink because he's observing Ramadan. He's lost weight around 5 kilos. The normal regime starts again tomorrow. He's not sure. It depends on the moon position. The following lesson with Anne. We use punching bags and jump ropes. We also train by kicking against piles and recovered mattresses. First battle in the ring with strangers. We learn how to control our strength and our gestures. We are sweating. We start to realize our own strength and that of our opponent. The room is generally silent. You hear the kick of and sometimes music. A battle with Anne. I'm afraid of hurting her. I often stop my kicks halfway. Battle 1-on-1. The referee controls the rules. The ring is delimited by ropes. I continue to follow Ibrahim's teaching. After several weeks, I start to get myself used to it and my body changes. The muscles are more visible. The boxing is hand-to-hand fighting. Violence is physical and direct. You are not used to it. You are alone with yourself and your opponent, who reflects your image. Strength and weakness must be managed immediately. The emotions also must be confronted directly. You win a match in your head. You have to convince your partner that you are stronger. Cunning in relation to your opponent. Dissuasion strategies. Not showing anything, even if you suffer or you hurt. Pretending not to be hurt, so he will doubt. You have to either dissuade the opponent or intensify. Not being transparent. Not letting them see through you. For Ibrahim, violence is easier to manage on a ring than on the street. It is where you have to free your violence. If you want to fight the other, to the carry. Ibrahim started boxing when he was 13. You can continue all your life, but you have to be careful with kicks in the head. One of his friends doesn't have clear ideas anymore. He had taken too many kicks. Some people come to boxing only to get hit. The discipline rapidly changes into a habit. The body gets used to it very easily, and soon, if you don't train, things get worse. Actually, Anne went to buy a kicking bag this afternoon. She doesn't want to stop training and is worried about not being able to bear the summer break. Ibrahim knows how to read bodies. He sees everything. He also knows how to keep what he sees for himself. That's why I trust him. The direct physical relation of boxing is managed by a control of distance and by a balance of force. It is about control that one imposes on oneself and the other in the instant exchange with the opponent. Ibrahim sits in front of me at the table in a coffee place. He's a bit curled up, which is also the defensive position, but he constantly looks at the floor because he's not at ease. We speak the same language, but we don't always understand each other. I see myself in his eyes, he probably in mine, which does nothing to put either of us at ease. Our habits are like a third person is seated with us at the table. We are both attentive, not to register it too much in order not to put the other in an awkward position. He has worn his glasses. That evening, I go back to the République, Place de la République, and watch 2 movies. La Maîtresse, 1976, with Bulogier. I love him because he's the only man I don't distrust. The actress climbs up the stairs and the dungeon with difficulty. She's suffocating. She can't breathe anymore. She thinks it is her dominatrix corset that is too tight, but it is an anxiety crisis. Holy Motors, 2012, minute 63:55 seconds. I'm afraid of the cameras. They used to be heavier than us. Today, they have become smaller than our heads. When I trip on a pile in the street, I feel ashamed before it hurts. I wonder if the people there have seen me. Every day for the last 10 years, Romain walks from Rue Vaugirard to the Boulevard Saint-Germain to go to the tabac. He knows the way so well that he can go out without his cane. He drinks a coffee a bit further on the boulevard, then to Rue de Condé to buy bread, passing by Rue de l'École Polytechnique. He asks me what I look like. I start to laugh. He starts to laugh too. It's a bit embarrassing. I think a few minutes. I don't know where to start. Long hair, brown eyes, spotted with beauty spots, a bump on the nose, very white skin, an asymmetrical mouth, strange teeth, not very tall, thin and muscles. He never thinks about how people look. He asks me if I found myself pretty. I answer that I wouldn't change a thing. One morning, he decides to go all the way to the end of the street after the tabac and realizes that the tabac is in fact next to the bakery, just 50 meters away. He never thought about it. It is at this moment when he linked the two streets to each other, that he decides not to choose between his job as a writer and as a pianist. He will do both. He hesitated for a long time during his studies at Sciences Po. He needed something that could make him travel while staying at the same place. I asked him if, when he travels, he reads the landscape with the accents. He speaks bad English, and this complicates everything a bit. He has a problem making himself understood. He thinks I'm 31 years old. 31 for my self-assurance, not more because of my enthusiasm and my hopefulness. He managed to guess gender thanks to the voice, excluding children before the age 5. In the subway in London, I look at the person in fake golden frames on white tiles. Tell us what you think. The same in Paris, 2 hours later, an advertisement by SNCF. Switzerland is next door. Paris, Lausanne, 25 euros. I get on the train and it stops between 2 stations. I feel once more that the claustrophobia crisis is arising. I adopt one of my most efficient strategies, the ignorance system, to ignore its own environment in order to take the anxiety level down, so that the crisis doesn't blow up. I look at photos on my mobile phone to forget where I am.
That was really great, especially I really like that the baby wanted to take part of the conversation. I think it kind of adds a nice touch to the reading, actually.
Okay.
um,
Well, it's just a bit, he's a bit agitated, so I just need like a 2-minute break.
yes, sure.
I mean, we can stay on phone, but just that
Yeah,
I need to
no
change
problem,
position
no
or something.
problem.
Okay.
So I'm gonna read the brief description from the back of the book. Oh, actually, before all of that, how do you, so I do know that the pronunciation of the book is kind of more important than the spelling of the name of the book, but how would you pronounce it? Like, what do you hear when you see these letters?
Oh, something like a
Okay, that's what I thought. So I'm gonna read it now. Composed between destinations in airplanes, trains, museums, and bars over 3 years, Jeanne Graff's VJ captures the slight intersections of a loose group of artists, lawyers, restaurateurs, philosophers, winemakers, and boxers whose lives are conducted almost entirely in a second language. A loose chronicle masquerading as a novel, which, like Michel Bernstein's All the King's Horses, the Bernadette Corporation's Rena Spallings, and Natasha Stagg's surveys, couches Graff's sharp observations in a laconic and ambient style. By not saying too much, Vish says everything about the relation to time, cities, weather, and smog that has become the lingua franca of a creative and transient life. So I think this is a particularly interesting book in the age that we're living in at the moment, actually, given that many of these things, such as changing destinations, traveling, going to bars casually, are now kind of impossible for many of us, or at least limited. I thought it was quite nice to open this conversation with a reflection on the content of the book and the way that it was written. And one thing that I noticed that was also quite important as an observation is that lives of the people you're mentioning are, as it said here, conducted almost entirely in a second language, which to me is a very cosmopolitan characteristic. And it's something that's being brought into question at the moment, I would say. So I'd like to start with a sentence that I read in an interview you gave to Juliana Huxtable for Moose Magazine. For those of our listeners who don't know, Juliana is an American artist, writer, performer, DJ, and co-founder of the New York-based nightlife project Shock Value, and as far as I know, is currently based in Berlin. She was actually mentioned in the book, and not only that, there's an entire chapter that is dedicated to her. So she asked you, have you written before, and what was your relation to writing? And then you said, I've been trying, but was never happy about it. And obviously your answer goes further than this, but I wanted to focus on that sentence. So I'm wondering, how or when do you know you're happy about what you've written?
Well, I guess it's when it feels right towards a
Mm-hmm.
moment or a situation. Like in a simple, fun, poetic, and moving way. For example, today it was nice to read again the first chapter of the book that I wrote 6 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and I still like it, so it's a good feeling, I guess.
Yes. And so what would you say writing has meant to you as a process, like over these years, considering how it's often mentioned that you wrote your book accidentally? Is it like a sort of remembering or a healing or simply like having a diary?
No, actually, it's because I'm also working as a curator, and the first chapter I wrote while we were organizing a show in Paris with Anne Imhoff and Andresen. We spent the summer together, and instead of writing a press release,
Mm-hmm.
I thought it's more interesting to write about what we are doing, and that was the boxing. And
Mm-hmm.
then so that's how it started.
Yes.
It studies as a kind of small booklet that I published that was accompanying the exhibition in Le Bar in Paris.
Mm-hmm. So can you tell us a bit more about the book's title?
The VJ, it's actually so I had an art space in Lausanne for about 6 years, maybe more, and then I had one in Geneva, and I wasn't really happy about its form, like doing an exhibition that lasts a certain amount of time, and then you change it. And I was more interested in researching, in doing an art space which shape would and structure would match the world we live in, or the kind of life we had. Or now I speak in the past, which was traveling and I guess also the writing this story. It was also a way to link those spaces together, like the Le Bar in Paris, and then the second show we did. It was the restaurant called VJ in Basel during the art fair.
So actually, the show was a restaurant, or it was taking place at a restaurant?
It was we built a restaurant that, like from nothing, and so it was a restaurant that we did for about 6 days during the art fair, and we had performance and around 100 people were eating here every night, and concerts. And the name of the restaurant, it comes from like something like because it's the idea of to not define it too much and leave it open to interpretation. And it's also a joke about my struggle with pronunciation and accent.
Yeah. And actually, the red line that's appearing on the cover, is that like the logo of the restaurant, or?
Yeah, exactly. Then I asked Maïtou Perret if she could do the VJ logo, and she designed a big neon. And then when we traveled to China and the other exhibition, then we did a small edition of the neon that we were taking with us. And it became like the logo. And the cover of the book is actually a flyer that we did with Juliana. Yeah, so things just started that way, you know, without thinking too much about it. And then, but in a way also, it's kind of a very precise method.
Do you ever think about this connection between food and text, or food and art, since this was like a pop-up restaurant at an art fair? So I was just wondering if that's something you're dealing with as well in your curating and writing, except for this project.
Yeah, I mean, not really. I guess it's just that I mean, food is a very important part of our life, but it's not particularly about food.
So it's more about the people getting together and eating, and is that the idea?
Well, the restaurant, it came because we were like, what do we need during Art Basel? And actually a restaurant felt like something useful.
That's true.
So yeah, you know.
Yes, exactly.
And
that's something that you really need at an art fair. I think people are in desperate need of food and drinks all the time, especially the ones who are working.
But I guess it was also like building. Yeah, but also it felt like I guess it was the idea of building a place where you can set up your own rules, where you feel good, where you can just hang out.
the book started off as a collection of letters that are dedicated to your friends. And when you told me this, I thought it was really beautiful. However, when they're read by someone else, it feels like a new author is born. So I was wondering how you felt about that.
Well, it's not really letters.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I mean, every chapter is built a bit differently. Also, so basically, what happened is that I wrote this first chapter with the boxing in Paris, and during the summer with Andresen and Anne Imhoff, they brought me to a reading of Silver that was about schizo culture, the reedition, and that's how I met Silver, and he read the first chapter, and he was like, "Oh, it's good. You should do more, write more." And then I just continue writing.
Mm-hmm.
Like and
so that's how you got to know about semiotext, actually, right?
Yeah,
I think I read that somewhere. I think it's I mean, of course, in that semiological sense, it makes I feel like that's why it is so interesting, because you're actually demystifying the art world in a way, because many of the people in the book or in the chapters are actually people that are, let's say, from the global art world.
Yeah, I mean, it was not really about that when I mean, the thing is, I just wrote about the people that were around. And for example, when I wrote about Juliana, she was not part of the art world, for example. But because it was when I wrote about her, it was in 2014. Like when most of the book was written in 2014. You know, when you meet someone like Juliana, it was in 2013. I was just thinking, oh wow, this woman is so interesting, and then she told me her story, and then I just wrote it down and give it to her as a gift, you know, without really thinking, without really thinking further. But it is, I guess, interesting to read for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Her story.
And did she reciprocate? Did she write a story about you?
Yeah, she wrote something about me in the. She wrote a text about me that was really a beautiful gift back. The text is in the Moose article, the introduction. It's a really beautiful text. It's about how we met.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like it's an interesting thing to observe. Just as, you know, for example, how when someone who knows, who is like in part of this world in a sense, then they can sort of associate the people and, you know, like put faces on the people who appear in the book. But I'm just thinking, you know, like in the sense of meaning, how it's interesting if someone is just reading it and doesn't have a clue about who those people are. I feel like it could be a different feeling.
Yeah. Well, I guess everyone, also what I noticed is that everyone read it differently. And
I really liked the boxing part, even like in how it was connected to the rest of the chapter as well, and how it just sort of flows. And the boxing part kind of reminded me of something I heard in The Sopranos when one of the guest characters, who is a physicist, describes boxing, and he's talking about boxing as two bodies that are actually not in conflict, but they're just one single entity moving back and forward. And that was super interesting to me, because when you wrote about it and about how your body needs to learn how to behave unnaturally, I think that's something you wrote. It reminded me of it.
The thing is, it's Anne Imhoff, who is very into boxing, brought me and Andresen to her boxing classes. And I was working with Anne on a show Francesca, Pia, and like we were like working together. And then I also thought, well, because boxing is an important part of her life, if I want to understand her work, it's important that I also understand the boxing. And so we all went there, and it was a really yeah, I do it sometimes, but I wouldn't say I'm a boxer, like. But it is a very important experience.
Because of the way in which the book is written and all of the bits of experiences and details and the way that time is presented, like something almost unimportant. I feel like the book is sort of like a relic of the fast and turbulent world that we've known until 2020. And just like you said before, you said I'm speaking in the past. So I had to think of a freedom that I, for example, no longer really feel. Do you ever look at it this way from today's perspective, as if the book is dedicated to a time that stopped?
Yeah, no, but I'm happy that I think things are always moving and changing, and I'm happy that the book speaks about the time when it was written, and that's also
no, I feel like it's definitely
kind of right.
Very interesting that I kind of came across it now, because as I said, it really reminded me of something that is currently in the past, but hopefully it's gonna be happening again.
No, but also when you write a book, it's you write it and then you just let it go in a way, and having his own life, and so because you just read the book a week ago or a few months ago, and I wrote it 6 years ago. Actually, when I was thinking of an art space without walls, or of like open architecture for an art space, just one day I just read this article that was mentioning that the NASA found this planet. The NASA has a mission called Kepler that is looking for a new form of life in the galaxy, and every planet they found, they have a number, and this one is the number 186F, and it's potentially a planet where we could live. And I just like the idea of something that was where you can just imagine everything, or that is just new, and then so I just use it. I use that name as a kind of a imaginary address. I reversed the number and the name of planet.
So how would you describe the concept of that gallery? Does it still operate?
Yeah, I mean the last event we did in March. I mean I had a baby, so, and then the lockdown, and then but of course we'll continue. But also the good thing is there is no structure, as you say, maybe in time. I mean, it's not that we need to do something every month or it's always a bit different.
This idea of nonlinear time is interesting because it can be taken in such simple terms. Like, for example, you don't need to have a schedule and have a structure, and you can just do things as they come. But also it can refer to, space and cosmos and things like that. So I thought that it was a really good parallel with the planet. You mentioned that someone is doing the illustration for your short story.
Oh yeah, that's Gaia Vincenzini. She's an artist from Geneva, and we've been working together also with Kepler the last 2 years. She's doing the posters.
She's the one who did all the posters that are on the website.
Not all of them, but the last 2 years it's her. Some of them is Juliana, some of them it's and so on. It's always a bit different, but the last 2 years, it's Gaia. She's really good at illustration, and we're having a lot of fun working together.
How do you work together? Does she make the illustration after reading the story, or?
No, it's more like because for Kepler we have an event, and there is, for example, it's gonna be a concert with Stefan Cherepnin and Sadaf, Nava, and so on, and then we're like, oh, there is this ring by Andresen. And send a photo, and then Gaia make a drawing out of the photo, and then someone else add something, and so on and so on, and then that's how we make the poster.
Mm-hmm. So it's like a collective illustration, in a sense.
It's just like we speak together, and then she's making the drawings. Or there is one poster that was with a drawing by Weiss, the Total Freedom poster,
Mm-hmm.
and then a drawing that I made, and then a drawing that Gaia made. It's all those drawings together.
Can I find that poster on the Kepler?
Yeah, if you go on Kepler.
Yeah. Okay.
It's the Total Freedom, and Total Freedom is the name of the artist of Ashland, and then it became kind of a slogan. It's a beautiful slogan, right?
Total freedom, yeah, definitely. I'm just trying to find it, but
from the green drawing, Fischle and Weiss.
Yeah.
David Weiss, he made drawings, and that's a photo of one of the drawing, and a drawing that I made, the woman, and then Gaia, she made the handwriting, and she put everything together. But it's like, that poster, for example, we made like 2 years ago, and it's not like predicting the future, but I guess already 2 years ago, everybody was feeling that writing total freedom on a poster is something useful at the moment.
Yeah, especially with this sort of ecological context a little bit.
Yeah. And that's a good example about also how I write or how I work. Is like, it's like also this poster what was kind of done by accident, but not really by accident. It's just like we're just being open to what's around, and then you compose the poster, and then you see the result, and you're like, oh, actually it makes sense. But it's just that, it was not planning in advance. Oh, we're gonna use this and that and that. It's more like, also we're having a lot of fun doing things all together, and then you just have something. You have an image, and you're like, oh, cool, interesting.